The wind out here don't carry much, but dust and memory. Sometimes when the sun slips low behind the mesas, it brushes gold across the land, like a painter running out of light. That's when I feel it most. That ache of quiet. The kind that don't hurt, but sure don't leave neither. My name don't matter much anymore. Folks in town call me the rancher from Willow Creek, and maybe that's enough. Been running Triple Creek Ranch since my pa's time, keeping the fences mended, the horses fed, and the nights long. It's honest work, even if the ghosts ride close. That summer, the desert was dry as sin and twice as mean. Coyotes sang to the moon, cattle bawled for water, and I'd about given up on company that wasn't four-legged. Then word came of an auction down by the saloon, not for horses, but for people. Slaves, they called them polite. Lost souls, I reckoned. I weren't looking for trouble, but sometimes the Lord drops it right in front of you and dares you to walk away. I remember riding into town that morning. Dust rose around my boots like smoke from an old fire. The street was lined with men hollering, laughing, tossing silver like it meant something, and there she was, standing on that rough plank, wrists bound in iron, eyes full of fight. They called her the Wild Girl, said no man could tame her. She looked half-starved, half-spirit, a creature caught between freedom and fury. I should have kept riding, but her gaze found me, steady, defiant, like she'd already seen every kind of hell, and wasn't impressed. I felt something twist inside, quiet but sure, like a horse turning toward home. The auctioneer barked, $50. A man in a bowler hat laughed. She's worth $100 if she can bite, the crowd roared. And before I rightly knew what I was doing, I heard my own voice cut through the dust. 100 in gold. Silence hit hard. The laughter died down, replaced by a slow murmur. The auctioneer blinked, nodded once, and slammed his gavel. Sold to the rancher from Willow Creek. They handed me the key. The chains clinked. She didn't thank me. Didn't have to. Her chin lifted just a bit, proud and wary. When I unlocked those cuffs, she didn't move. She just rubbed her wrists, then looked me in the eye. You bought nothing, she said, voice hoarse but steady. I ain't no man's property. I tipped my hat. Good eye, I told her. Ain't looking to own what don't want to be owned. She stared a long time, like she was trying to decide if that was a lie. Then she walked past me, barefoot, limping, but still holding her head high. I followed slow, 2 steps behind, like a man trailing a storm he knows might wash him clean or drown him for good. That night, we camped under a sky so wide it made you feel small enough to start over. She didn't talk much, and I didn't press. Just the crackle of the fire and the wind moving through the sage. Every once in a while, I'd glance her way. She sat apart, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes on the flames. There was a hardness in her, sure, but also a hunger, not for food, not for pity, and for space, for a life that wasn't decided by men with coins in their hands. And sitting there, with the coyotes calling and the firelight dancing on her face, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not love, not yet, just the sense that maybe the desert wasn't so empty after all. By dawn, the world was still and gray, the kind of quiet that hangs before the heat comes. I saddled up, packed the bedrolls, and turned to find her already awake, standing by the fire's embers. She had a way of moving, light, careful, like every sound might betray her. I offered coffee, She didn't take it, just said, "I'll walk." We headed west, following the old creek bed toward the ranch. My horse kept glancing back at her, uneasy, maybe feeling the same current I did. The girl, Elena, I'd learn later, walked steady, even barefoot, even bleeding from the rocks. Didn't ask for help once. That kind of pride comes from pain you can't talk about. Half a mile out, she stopped, looked across the desert like she could still see the auction standing there. "You shouldn't have done it," she muttered. "Now they'll come for you, too." I shrugged. "And they can come. Ain't the first time I've had company I didn't invite." She almost smiled then, a shadow of it. "You talk like a man who don't expect to live long." I laughed low. "I live one sunrise at a time, ma'am. Been enough so far." We didn't talk much after that. The trail stretched on, gold dust rising from every step. I remember the way her hair caught the sun, burnt copper and wild wind, and for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about the work waiting back home. We reached Triple Creek by sundown. The ranch sat quiet, framed by cottonwoods and ghosts. My foreman, Tom, met us at the gate, squinting like he couldn't quite trust what he saw. "You brought a stray, Sam?" "She's staying a while," I said. I'm guest quarters." Elena cut in, cold and sharp. "Not guest, just until I can ride." Tom looked at me, then her, then nodded slow. "Reckon she's got spirit." "Reckon she does," I said, and that was the end of it. That night, I showed her the small cabin by the barn, a clean cot, a basin, a door that locked from the inside. She tested it twice before settling. When I turned to leave, she spoke soft. "You don't gotta pretend kindness, cowboy. I've seen what comes after." I paused at the door. "Ain't pretending. You sleep safe tonight. Ain't nobody touching you here." Outside, the stars had come alive, thousands of them, bright as broken promises. I leaned against the corral fence and let the night roll over me. There was peace in it, but the kind that don't last. See, I've been down that road before, thinking I could save someone. Years back, when the world was meaner and I was greener, I took in a woman from the borderlands. Thought I could give her better, but folks talk in small towns and poison spreads fast. She left before the first frost, leaving only a note. You can't fix what's already broke. Sometimes I still hear her voice when the wind cuts through the pines. Maybe that's why I stopped at that auction. Maybe I was trying to make right what I'd once done wrong. Or maybe I was just lonely enough to believe the desert could forgive me if I gave something back. Toward midnight, I heard her stir inside the cabin. Nightmare sounds, sharp breaths, then quiet. I didn't go in. Some fights a person's got to finish alone. But I sat there under the stars till dawn anyway, just in case she needed to know someone stayed. 2 weeks passed slow, like syrup in winter. Elena kept mostly to herself, mended tack, helped Miguel with the horses, learned to move around the place like she'd always belonged. Didn't talk much, but when she did, it was straight as a bullet and just as true. I watched her from the porch sometimes, brushing down the roan gelding by the barn. She'd hum low under her breath, some tune I couldn't place. There was peace in her then, but I knew peace never stayed long for folks like us. Out here, every quiet day's just a pause before something breaks. One afternoon, storm clouds built on the horizon, black as sin. Tom rode up from town, face drawn tight. "Got word," he said, "the Morrison boys are talking your name. Word is that wild girl you bought was theirs to sell again. I felt my jaw tighten. She ain't theirs. Never was. Tom spat in the dirt. They don't see it that way. That night, I told Elena. She froze mid-motion, the tin cup in her hand trembling just enough to catch the lamplight. Morrison, she whispered the name more like a wound than a word. Jake Morrison? Yeah. Her eyes went far off, like she was seeing something I couldn't. He's the one sold me, after his brother was done. The cup fell, rolled across the floor. I didn't move, didn't speak. The only sound was the wind rattling the shutters and her breath trying not to break. After a while she said, "You should let me go. If they come, they'll burn this place." I shook my head. "They'll find I burn back." She looked up at me then, truly looked, and what I saw wasn't fear. It was exhaustion, bone deep and old. "Why'd you do it?" she asked at the auction. "Guess I was tired of watching good souls get broken while men like them got rich." She nodded once, slow. "You'll die for that kind of tired." "Maybe," I said, "but I'll sleep better till then." The next day, the storm hit. Not Morrison, something older, wilder. A sandstorm rolled in off the flats, turning noon to night. Wind screamed through the ranch. Flinging grit like needles, I yelled for the hands to get the horses in. Elena didn't wait for orders. She tore out into that storm like she'd been born in it, scarf tied across her face, eyes narrowed against the dust. Billy, the youngest hand, had gone after a panicked mare and hadn't come back. Without thinking, she grabbed a rope, tied it to the post, and vanished into the swirl. I followed, blind and half mad. The storm howled like the end of the world, sand slashing at every inch of skin. Couldn't see nothing but the line between us. Her rope, our only breath of connection. Then I felt the tug hard, another stronger. She was pulling something. When I reached her, she was crouched low. Arm around Billy, blood streaked on her temple. She looked up at me through that fury of dust and shouted, "I got him." I took her hand, wrapped the line round my wrist, and we dragged ourselves back inch by inch till the barn doors slammed shut behind us. Inside we fell to our knees, coughing and laughing like fools alive. Billy clung to her, crying. She just brushed the sand from his hair, whispering soft in Spanish, words I didn't know but sure felt. Later, when the storm passed and the sun broke through the cracks, she sat beside me on the floor, both of us half buried in dust. "You didn't have to come after me," she said. "Yeah," I answered, "I did." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached out, brushed the sand from my cheek with her thumb. "Maybe you ain't like them after all." Her touch lingered, warm, trembling, and then gone. But I knew right then. Whatever past we'd been running from, it wasn't done with us yet. When the storm cleared, the world felt born again. The air was clean, sharp, and full of the smell of wet dust, that scent the desert saves for its rarest mercy. But I knew mercy don't last long out here, not with the Morrisons riding somewhere behind the horizon. We spent the next few days mending fences, fixing roofs, patching what the wind tore loose. Billy stuck close to Elena now, like a pup that finally found who'd pull him from the creek. I'd catch him grinning whenever she taught him a few words of Spanish, both of 'em laughing soft, like maybe the world wasn't all bad after all. But there was a restlessness in her. I could feel it like thunder still hiding in the clouds. Nights, she walked down to the river, sit alone, watched the current slide by. I let her. Some souls need the silence to hear themselves again. One evening, I found her there, hat off, fingers trailing the water. "You planning to run?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. She smiled faintly. "Would you stop me if I did?" "No," I said, "but I'd sure wish you'd wait till after supper." That got a laugh. The first real one. The kind that made the lines at the corners of her eyes soften. She turned to me. You ever lost something you couldn't bury?" "Plenty." I said. "Some things you don't bury. You just carry 'em quieter." She nodded, eyes glinting with starlight. "My sister, Rosa. Morrison took her too. I don't know if she's alive." That name hung between us like prayer smoke. "Then we'll find her," I said. She shook her head. "No, you don't owe me that." "I don't owe," I told her. "I decide." She looked away, whispering, "You're a fool." "Yeah," I said, "but I'm still riding." And so we did. 2 mornings later, saddled up before dawn, we rode east, where the canyons folded like scars across the land. Tom stayed to guard the ranch. Miguel packed us enough jerky and bullets for a week. The trail was long and mean, buzzards circling, sun crushing every drop of sweat. We followed rumor and dust till we found an old prospector camped by a dry well. Said he'd seen Morrison's wagons heading south toward Yuma, hauling crates that rattled too light for iron. By the second day, the heat broke. Rain came in low sheets, drenching the earth, turning dust to glue. We took shelter under a rock shelf, fire sputtering between us. She was shivering, not from cold, but from memory. "They used to keep us chained," she said quiet. "Not for labor, for sport." Her voice cracked. "You sure you still want to find him?" I looked at her through the smoke. "Ain't about wanting. It's about finishing what shouldn't have been started." She leaned back, eyes closed, let the rain drum against the stone. "You talk like a man running out of tomorrows." "Maybe I'm just learning to spend 'em right," I said. Next day, we found the wagons, burned, empty. Elena walked among the ashes like she was walking through a graveyard. Then from the wreck, she pulled a scarf, blue cotton, torn but whole enough to see the initials stitched in the corner. R.M. Rosa Morrison. She held it tight to her chest. "She was here," she whispered. "Maybe still is." That night, by the fire, she cried quiet. Not the kind that breaks, but the kind that heals a little. I didn't touch her, just sat close, let the silence do what words couldn't. When dawn came, she rose first, looked at the horizon, then at me. "Let's go home," she said, and I knew she didn't mean the ranch. She meant something bigger, the kind of peace a person only finds after facing every ghost that ever tried to own him. We turned the horses west. The sunrise spilling fire over the desert. For the first time in a long while, the road didn't feel lonely. We made it back to Triple Creek before the next full moon. The land was greener than I remembered, a thin wash of spring spreading across the valley like forgiveness. I'd near forgotten the smell of cottonwoods after rain, that sweet, dusty perfume that makes a man stop and remember he's still alive. The hands came running when they saw us. Tom hollered, "Well, I'll be damned. Thought the coyotes had your bones by now." Miguel laughed, then turned serious when he spotted Elena. She looked thinner, worn, but her eyes, Lord, her eyes were calm, like a storm that finally found its edge. We found out Rosa was alive 2 days later. A rider from Yuma brought a letter. Short, careful handwriting on paper still smudged with tears. Rosa had escaped, taken in by a preacher's family near Tucson. She was safe, needed time to mend. When Elena read those words, she just stood still for a long while, then handed me the paper with hands that wouldn't quit shaking. "She's free," she whispered. "I guess that makes two of you," I said. That night, she came to the porch. The sun was melting into the hills, turning the world copper and soft. She didn't speak right away, and I didn't rush her. Some truths need a little silence before they take shape. "I used to hate this land," she said finally. "Too empty, too cruel. But maybe it ain't the land's fault. Maybe it was me, carrying too much fear to see what was still beautiful." I nodded slow. The desert don't give easy, but it don't lie either. She looked at me then, eyes shimmering with the last light. "You ever think about leaving, Samuel?" "Sometimes. But every time I do, the wind reminds me who I'll be leaving behind." She smiled, small, honest. "You talk like a man who's found something worth staying for." "Maybe I have." She stepped closer, reached up, brushed her fingers along the brim of my hat. "Maybe I have too. I don't rightly remember who moved first, hers or me. Only that the distance between us finally gave up and disappeared. The kiss wasn't wild, wasn't desperate. It was steady, like coming home after too many winters gone. From that night on, she stayed, not as a guest, not as someone owned, but as part of the land itself, riding beside me at sunrise, laughing with Billy, humming that same quiet tune that had followed her from the past. Come autumn, the cottonwoods turned gold, and we married under their shade. Tom built the arch from driftwood, Miguel brought a guitar, and the wind itself seemed to stand still long enough to listen. She wore that blue scarf, cleaned and mended, a memory made new. I remember her saying, "Maybe love ain't about taming. Maybe it's about understanding what was wild in the first place." Years later, when folks ask about the story, the auction, the storm, the woman they called untamable, I tell them the same thing every time. She weren't wild. She was just free. And I reckon freedom only needs a place gentle enough to rest. Now the nights are quiet again. The coyotes sing, the stars breathe, and sometimes when the fire burns low, I hear her laughter drift through the open door. It sounds like forgiveness, like peace. And maybe that's all a man can hope for, to love what was never his to keep, and to keep it only by never holding too tight. Maybe love ain't about holding on. It's about learning to let go gentle.